and has given us life, bi-idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala. Until he mentioned, ikhwan, فَانْتَلَقَ فَجَاءَهُمْ بِعِذْقٍ فِيهِ بُصْرٌ وَتَمْرٌ, until he came with them with a portion, ikhwan, of dates. فَقَالَ كُلُوا مِنْ هَذِهِ, eat from these particular affairs. So the Prophet ﷺ said to him, إِيَّاكَ وَالْحَلُوبِ, beware of slaughtering the animal that gives from the milk, the animal that is milked. فَذَبَحَ لَهُمْ فَأَكَلُوا مِنَ الشَّاةِ, so he slaughtered them and they ate. وَمِنْ ذَلِكَ الْعِذْقِ فَشَرِبُوا, and they ate also from that portion of dates, and they drank. فَلَمَّا أَنْ شَبَعُوا, and when they became full from that affair, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لأبي بكر وعمر, and then when they became full from this affair that they had eaten, the Prophet ﷺ turned to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and turned to Umar and he said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِ بِيَدِهِ لَتُسْأَلَنَّ عَنْ هَذَا النَّعِيمِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, indeed you will be asked about this blessing on the day of judgment. أخرجكم من بيوتكم الجوع ثم لم ترجعوا حتى أصابكم هذا النعيم. You left your homes hungry and you did not return to them until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sufficed you. You will be asked about this on Yawm al-Qiyamah. All of us, ikhwan, will be asked about these blessings that we receive. How many of us, ikhwan, have reached the level we have to leave our homes in the middle of the night out of hunger? How many of us, ikhwan, have to leave our homes in the middle of the night because of the pains of not having something to eat? As the Messenger of Allah, the one that we follow, ikhwan, the one that we know is the best of mankind, that we follow, ikhwan, leaving his home in the middle of the night for hunger. How many of us have sacrificed in the same way that the Messenger of Allah sacrificed? How many of us sacrificed in the same fashion that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq had sacrificed? How many of us sacrificed in the same manner that Umar ibn Khattab had sacrificed, giving from themselves for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, patience upon poverty, patience upon the condition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had chosen for them? How many of us have the same patience for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many of us look within ourselves, ikhwan, and find ibadah, worship for Allah, sufficient for us? Sufficient for us in regard to this particular matter. And another narration that Shaykh Muqbil brings with regard to this matter is a hadith that is collected by Imam al-Tirmidhi in his Jami' and authenticated by Shaykh Muqbil in Dhamm al-Mas'ala, where he mentions, ikhwan, barakallahu fikum, an Fadala ibn Ubayd, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا صلى بالناس يخر الرجال من قيامهم في الصلاة من الخصاصة وهم أصحاب الصفة حتى يقول الأعراب هؤلاء مجانين أو مجانون. فإذا صلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم انصرف إليهم فقال لو تعلمون ما لكم عند الله لأحببتم أن تزدادوا ثاقة وحاجة. There comes in this authentic narration, ikhwan, that the Fadal ibn Ubayd mentioned that when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to pray with the companions, some of them, ikhwan, would be so hungry that they would be so weak that they couldn't stand in qiyam, they would collapse in prayer. They would be so hungry and they would be so weak from their hunger that when they were in qiyam, they would collapse from standing, ikhwan. And it was mentioned that they were from the people of Sufa, Ahl Sufa, those who had to live in the masjid of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as we were mentioned from the Kalam of Imam al-Mubarak-Furi and the explanation of this particular narration, that they were so weak from their hunger, ikhwan, they could not stand in the salat until they had collapsed, until some of the Arab, the desert Arabs, when they would see this, they would say, those people have lost their senses, they have lost their senses. And another wording of this particular narration, one of them mentioned, I did not lose my senses, illa al-ju'. The only thing that caused me to collapse was my hunger. It was not that they had lost their senses, but the ju', their hunger caused them to collapse in the prayer. And when the prayer was over, the Messenger of Allah would go to them, ikhwan, and he would say, if you knew what was in this for you from virtue and blessings, you would love to be increased in need. If you knew what was found in this affair, in patience upon this matter, in patience in ibadah, in worship upon this hardship, if you knew the blessings that were found therein in this particular matter, you would want to be increased in need. How many of us, ikhwan, have this type of direction in our ibadah? This type of direction in our worship? Until some of us are full, our bellies are full, ikhwan, and we still don't have this type of fortitude in our salah. We still don't have this type of fortitude and diligence in the ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But those men who preceded us from the best of generations, ikhwan, had patience upon this affair. They have given us a precedence that has been set by Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah to have patience upon this matter. And if you have patience upon this matter, Ikhwan, then you will not sell yourself out for a piffling of the dunya. If you have this type of fortitude upon hunger and upon poverty and upon loss of wealth, you would never sell your religion for a piffling price. You will never sell yourself, your deen, and your affair out for a small price, for a piece of this dunya, whatever it may be, because you have learned, Ikhwan, patience upon poverty. And this is why Shaykh Muqbil collected these narrations to give us some ibrah, some lesson with regard to this matter. Have patience as your predecessors did, and never sell your religion out for a small price. And then the Shaykh, he mentions, Ikhwan, or afterwards we collect from the Kalam of Imam al-Mubarak 40, with regard to this particular matter, that he mentions who was Ahlul Safa, and he says, As-Sahaba al-Fuqara, Ghuraba, those companions who were from the impoverished, the strangers and the wayfarers. وَكَانُوا سَبْعِينَ, and they were around 70. وَيَقِلُّونَ حِينًا وَيُكْثِرُونَ حِينًا. Sometimes they were more than 70 and sometimes they were less than 70. And they used to live in the masjid of the Messenger of Allah وَلَا مَالَهُمْ وَلَا وَلَدْ وَكَانُوا مُتَوَكِّلِينَ يَنْتَظِرُونَ مَنْ يَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْهِمْ بِشَيْءٍ يَأْكُلُونَهُ وَيَلْبَسُونَهُ. That they used to, Ikhwan, stay in the masjid and they had no wealth or children, and they used to depend and wait upon the people for sadaqah, for something that they could wear or something that they could eat. And in the next narration, Imam al-Bukhari, he mentions, Ikhwan, upon the authority of Sa'ad radiyallahu anhu, yaqul, inni la awwal al-Arab rama bi-sahm fi sabilillah. Indeed, I was the first from the Arab to be struck with an arrow in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكُنَّا نَغْزُو مَعَ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And indeed, we used to go out in the battles with the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. مَا لَنَا طَعَامٌ إِلَّا وَرَقَ الشَّجَرِ. And we had no food but the leaves of the trees. And we found no food. We used to go out and fight with the Prophet ﷺ in battles, and we would find nothing to eat but the leaves upon the trees. And then he mentions, حَتَّى إِنَّ حَدَّنَا لَيَدْعُ كَمَا يَدْعُ الْبَعِيرُ أَوْ الشَّاةُ مَا لَهُ خِلْطٌ. Until one of us, when we would go to pass our bowels, our excrement would be hard like that of the camel, because it didn't have anything in it but the leaves of the trees, Ikhwan. Sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mujahidun, Ikhwan, going out in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-jur', upon hunger. So hungry, Ikhwan, they could find nothing to eat. Imagine this. Going out to fight in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, finding nothing to suffice themselves but the leaves upon the trees. What have we sacrificed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What have we truly given, Ikhwan? We have not sacrificed in this particular manner. We have not been tested in this particular manner. But still we come up short. But still we come up, Ikhwan, needy. Still we come up, Ikhwan, complaining. Still we come up, Ikhwan, not giving the same effort or even close to the same effort of those, Ikhwan, who did not have the strength because of the hunger, Ikhwan, that they had nothing but the leaves of the trees. Imam al-Bukhari, Ikhwan, in an authentic narration, it mentions about Imam al-Bukhari that in seeking one hadith, that he had traveled and found nothing to eat, illa hashish al-ard, he found nothing to eat but the grass of the earth. 3 days, nothing to eat but the grass of the earth. In collecting the narrations of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of us called to the masjid for salah. One of us called to the masjid for salah. Our bellies are full, but yet we don't find ourselves to have the energy to come to the house of Allah ta'ala. We have not learned sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have not learned that sacrifice. Of course, we understand we're not in the same manzila, the same position as the companions. We're not in the same position of the likes of Imam al-Bukhari. That is not the point. They are an ibrah for you, a lesson for you, a path for you to follow, a people to be emulated, to be looked upon and to look to follow their way. So here we have companions eating nothing but the leaves of the trees, in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But yet they found the fortitude and the strength to sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the next narration, Shaykh Muqbil brings from the hadith of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal upon the authority of Abdullah ibn Shaqiq, قال أقمت بالمدينة مع أبي هريرة سنة. I stayed with Abu Hurairah in al-Medina for a year. فقال لي ذات يوم, and he said to me one day, ونحن عند حجرة عائشة